right, hello everybody. Good evening. Welcome. This is the Yard Sign. Again, still adjusting to a lot of the changes here on the back end on the podcast studio, and so we're a little off schedule. We'll get back on schedule next week. Thank you so much for watching. Whenever, wherever you may be doing so, or listening. As a matter of fact, don't forget you can catch the audio version of our show on your favorite podcast platform all over the interwebs. Just check in with your favorite tech overlords and search for the Yard Sign. Jonny Torres here with usual characters, so it's going to be a fun show to say the least, and some very hot topics as we've got lots to talk about. So let's get right into today's topics. We got RDS launching his campaign. That's Ron DeSantis launching the 2024 campaign for the Republican primary first, and then hopefully for the general election for president versus Joe Biden, because we know Democrats aren't going to let anybody else take that nomination from Joe. So our second topic is going to be woke and pride. Plenty culture war stuff going on as Target, Bud Light, all in retreat from the I guess small protests that have been happening, the outrage that has come about due to some of their posturing in favor of LGBTQ agendas, and then we've also got the debt ceiling that has been passed. We're going to talk about some of the good points, the bad points, and how it all came to be in the first place, because I'm sure some are shocked that it happened at all. So let's get into tonight's cast of characters, to say the least. Right across from me, the one and only David Anibal Cabrera. Hello.
Hello. It's been a pleasure. It's been great.
I know. We're still not back into our rhythm, but
no, we're not. But
we'll get there.
I'll see you guys next week.
Yes, exactly. And returning to the hot seat, a good friend of ours we haven't had in way too long, Mr. Nate Ginter. Hello, sir.
I think this is a four-peat, so
yeah.
Always fun to be here. And,
well, now you're incorporating props. I mean, you've got...
It's very true. Well, I am here as the voice of freedom.
There we go.
1776 never
Somebody
dies.
has to be, because it's not that guy right there.
When did this become a thing?
Because he's a crown worshiper.
That's right.
You know you are.
Monarchist.
The tyrant King George.
I enjoy watching the soap opera from across the river.
Yeah, don't think you're hiding with your King George not being on the table, okay? Because it's over there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are these cameras working? I had no idea.
Typical Englishman, cut and run.
Look at that.
Yeah. No, red coat. All right.
When did this all happen?
Well, it may have been when you dressed up like the queen.
First of all, she died, so let's all calm F down.
Okay.
And the second of all, there was a coronation. Let's move on. I don't have time. I literally do not have time for these conversations.
We did like an episode and a half on the coronation, so.
And?
Well, you are going to be late.
I'm sorry. There's a billion people watching a coronation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into what really matters, which is the next president of the United States, the debt ceiling, please. Like we actually owe money to anybody.
Oh my! Please, like a good comedian once said, "Yeah, of course. Show me your army. Show me your army."
That's right. That's right.
Help me help you.
We could literally cut the defense budget in half, and we would still just annihilate it.
A debt is only as valid as your ability to collect it.
You don't got an army? Well, if I didn't have an army, I would just shut. That's what I would do. I would just shut the up. Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know I didn't realize the Chinese were all up in the space program. They have their own space station they're building and everything. I was speaking of
what else are they supposed to do? Honestly,
I know, but I was kind of impressed. Their rockets went off without a hitch. They got a space station they're building. They got astronauts going up there.
Well, they're a lot smaller stuff they have to build though. So.
And like the windows for the ships are a lot thinner, so it's not that much material being used.
Yeah, is it all paper walls?
Yeah.
I mean, they figured it out somehow. It's all calligraphy for
me. No, it's Japan.
I'm not going to say bamboo rockets.
Who knew it was a source of energy?
It was. I did hear an interesting stat the other day because people were talking about standing armies and China has this and they're a threat. Do you know that we have 39 million hunting permits issued every year? So that is
39 million.
Oh yeah. So we basically.
I guess with renewals and.
Yeah. Like just people that hunt in this country, we have 40 times more people that are great with guns than the largest army.
Yeah. So it's like it's the standing army, it's the National Guard, it's the reserve, and then it's the hunters.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they'll get you from a while away.
Well, and if history has taught us anything, it's really the country folk you got to worry about.
That's true.
Completely.
So,
And again,
So Ron DeSantis launching his campaign, and what was it, a week ago?
it was a week ago. Whatever Twitter says it was. It
feels like a month ago.
everything feels
And
like
it went
a
off
week ago.
without a hitch. That was awesome.
That's
I
right.
heard no bugs at all.
I know. Let's hear from our cybersecurity expert on what you think in regards to the because I'm on the marketing side. I've been using Twitter since 2007. I was an early adopter. I love Twitter. Is it truly a possibility that because they were using Elon's account to do the broadcast, that it would have quote unquote melted the servers?
No. What it is likely is that broadcasting methodology that they're using is part of their new revenue model
Yes.
for doing, basically they're turning Twitter from a text content and text and image into a motion video content
Like
platform.
a multimedia platform.
Which
To
is
compete with
which is
YouTube.
very difficult.
It's
It's very difficult to do.
And Elon is, listen, I like there's a lot of things I like about him, a lot of things I don't. One of the quirks of his personality is he is very much the get it done guy and will stay up all night to get something done.
Yeah.
When you can't push a deadline like you can in manufacturing or in tech, there is a hard deadline. Sometimes your reach exceeds your grasp, and I believe he smacked up against that.
Yeah.
And they were just, quite frankly, unable to support the capacity of people that wanted to watch what was going on.
Which is a good thing. Which is a
Yeah.
good thing. It shows that there's a lot of intent and desire to see what was happening. But at the end of
they
the
can't
day,
max out at 200K though. That's
I happened to be on the platform right when
It went down.
it was starting. So I log on. I saw it reach 500,000, and then of course the subsequent outages. I kept getting on, getting bumped out, getting on, bumped out, getting on, bumped out, until they switched it to the other guy's account. And
they switched accounts. Like
they went to the actual host. I forget his name, but he's
Tucker
also
Carlson?
No, it was like David
He'll
Parks.
be there.
It was who's also a tech multimillionaire.
I didn't watch because I couldn't. So
I didn't watch
I
because
think he's PayPal. I think he's the PayPal guy.
well, Elon was a PayPal guy too.
No, I know, but that's
he's
what I'm
probably part of
saying.
the PayPal mafia. That's probably what is going on. I will say this: I did not watch it. I have yet to even watch it because I mean,
Well, there was nothing to watch.
what
It was
is there?
audio.
What is he going to tell me?
Right.
There's nothing that's going to be said.
No, and I thought, aside from the technical stuff, which honestly, I think in this day and age, people are a little more forgiving because they understand that that technology just can and will go wrong. But he opened the whole thing with a written speech. And it wasn't a short written speech.
DeSantis
either.
or
DeSantis?
Elon? Okay.
It was like about
So-
2 minutes long.
So on a platform that is known for short form content,
Correct.
When you're trying to appeal to a younger audience, that's why you go on Twitter.
Yeah.
You're trying to appeal to people that aren't already for you and going to watch Fox or CNBC. He needed to have a 30-second chunk at most, be exciting, energetic, engaging, and then get on with it.
Correct.
And anything over a minute on that platform is a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
It just is.
So I think you had a lot of people tune out pretty quick because they were like, it's a stump speech.
Yeah.
And although once they did get into the Q&A, there were some great questions.
Well, the Q&A I thought was the best part of this whole situation.
Well,
How
yeah.
you could have that conversation. But I agree with you. Everyone zoomed out after 2 minutes. After a minute, it didn't make any sense.
It's the modern attention span. Listen, we can all, especially those of us that are, a little older. I mean, I'm, 19. So I know, what it's like to be a part of this younger generation. But the reality is the younger folks, they have been raised and bred on content that is under 1 minute.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. And if you want to get their vote, you have to do you have to give them media that's consumable in chunk format that they consume. And sitting there going on, I mean, listen, we all know 2 minutes is not long for a speech at all.
Right.
That's a very short speech. But he wasn't there to give a speech. He was there
Correct.
to get
To
people
launch.
to launch and to get people excited.
it shouldn't have been scripted in the first place. Or
probably.
it should have been lightly scripted.
You shouldn't have known it was scripted.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you could tell. I mean, without even seeing him, you could hear it that it was
he's not an
scripted.
off the cuff kind of guy.
No,
Only when
but
he's
being
in
an attorney, he is long winded.
But well, yeah. But only time I see him off the cuff is when he's going into battle, honestly, with a reporter, or when he's going on in battle with something.
Which he's great.
When you see the
when he's in combat mode, he's good.
But that's the problem. Not many people
the
like the idea of the combat situation.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we want to go in that direction, yes, I thought it was a great.
Republicans do though. I mean, look at Trump.
I know.
They do, but as we all know, he needs segments of the population he doesn't already have in the bag,
and that's going to be the biggest problem.
Well, and I thought that kicking things off with Elon was a good approach at reaching people that he doesn't have in the bag. Somebody even suggested while I was watching it, they said what he should also do is make sure he goes on Joe Rogan's podcast, which would be a huge get for both of them. This is going to get them in. But this is going to get them in front of voters. That
you can't have DeSantis sitting there for 3 hours, because what will happen is he will get into the issues that are unpopular.
Correct.
And he will have to long form explain it, and the end will be but Jesus.
Yes.
And he will turn off a lot of people.
Also,
if he has to give that.
Maybe that's
Joe
something
Rogan
for the general.
But that's what I'm saying. All those things are general election situations. I still have very hesitant to say that I think that Ron DeSantis is going to get out of the primaries. I don't think he's going to come out of the primaries.
But it's still a marathon. What I do think is that he should have either done the Twitter thing and then do like a traditional launch, big event, fireworks, all that jazz, or the reverse. Do the big fireworks, do all that jazz. All right, good night.
Do the Q&A.
Good night, Dunedin, and then go on to the Q&A for Twitter.
We're gonna have a problem.
The fact that he can't. Now, the weather was awful, which is why I think they canceled it, even though they never officially said why they canceled it.
Sure.
I think he left a lot on the table by not doing a more of a traditional launch with all the networks there and everything.
Right.
It's not like this was a very well-kept secret that he wasn't going to run. If anything, we were just figuring out when he was going to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, and this is going to be one of my last comments, is that I have a huge problem with the fact that more and more Republicans are jumping into the presidential race because you're going to have a repeat of 16.
Well, that's the thing. Some are saying that after the Twitter, again, the old timers are going to see it as, oh my gosh, this was such a horrible launch and this and that. I don't think the average voter really is going to take it that way. Mind you, most primary voters probably aren't on Twitter anyways, especially on the Republican side.
But then doesn't that negate the point of why do it there in the first place?
Yeah. Again, it was more, I think this was more of something that could have waited to the general election because it would have put him in front of voters that maybe were considering him rather than primary voters that he needs to be winning.
It was a PR stunt gone wrong. So we can look at it in the lens now of posted going wrong and say, why would you do that? If you look at the side of what if it went right, he looks like somebody who is tech savvy, somebody who's out there at the forefront. Right. He looks like a leader in the space, even in, for not just politics, but in communication.
But this also tells you that his team doesn't know what's going on. At the end of the day, if you're dealing with, you made a great point. Yeah. You're on a platform that's known for its shorthand.
Right.
So then why are you doing a 2 to 5 minute speech? That makes absolutely no sense. Right. Also, the fact that I don't think there was enough run through to see what would happen. I doubt there was a plan B to figure out if something went wrong with Twitter, what was going to be the problem. I don't think there was a plan B.
No, and if you are again, if you're a major league level consultant, okay, which you should be if you're running his campaign. If that platform wasn't working 100%, you call an audible and you go in a different direction.
You do the record for for a 2 minute recording, and then you jump into the Q&A.
Well,
that would have been the best thing to do.
No, or just cancel the thing altogether.
Why not also just have a thing where I know it's there to promote Musk's platform for sure, right? But have a backup and be like, hey man, listen, if this goes down, we're piping over to YouTube too, something.
Now now what I'm seeing more and more is that this is all an effort for him to create division, to distance himself from Trump. All right, he's trying to show all the different ways. If you listen to the way he's talking about policy, if you look at the way he's running his campaign, everything is to show, see, look, I'm not like Trump. You know what I mean? It's Trump's not on Twitter, and from that perspective, I thought was brilliant because Trump's not on Twitter.
I can tell you what his whole game plan is right now. It's glaringly obvious. his whole game plan is he's going after the religious right in the Republican Party.
Which I don't. I agree with
that's
that.
the primary game. I mean,
That's not the primary game. That's Trump showed that you don't need to have that anymore.
He's not going to take voters from Trump.
No,
he needs to go for
But he thinks that's his angle in.
But that's what I'm saying is that the Trump voters are not going anywhere.
Yeah, but there are a lot of religious Trump voters that are not going to switch to the governor, and that's the problem in this conversation.
Yeah, but that's really all there is. I mean, you know, your moderate voters are going to vote for one or the other.
Your moderate voters aren't going to show up in the primaries.
That's what I'm saying.
So if they're not showing,
he and Trump are going after the same voters.
Not if there's 5 other people going after that same vote.
Well,
who
that's
do you
what I was
think
going to say.
Tim Scott's going to go after?
Some people
who do you think the governor from New Jersey?
Some people smelled blood in the water after the launch, but I don't think there really was much.
If Pence goes in, that's 5% of the religious right there.
Pence is old news. Pence is not
for the religious right that are upset with the president and want someone that's more traditional values. And if you're saying that DeSantis is moving that far right, well, then he's going to piss so many people off that if he does survive the primary, he's going to go absolutely nowhere in the general.
But there isn't no moving that far right. I mean, the legislation that he's passed has already laid the groundwork for that.
If you give religious people, I mean the ones that we're talking about, the core of the Republican right-wing base, if you give them a choice between Pence and Trump, you might be surprised at the results of that.
But if you liked Pence, you're not a fan of Trump.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I'm sorry, the other way around. If you were a fan of Trump, you're not a fan of Pence.
I'm going to disagree with you on that. I will tell you. I have some acquaintances that are very, very, I would say, extreme right wing religious, and those a lot of those people, you would be shocked how much they have found a way to twist
give me a
Donald
second,
Trump
sir. My goodness,
I'm sorry, I have to go.
Oh,
sorry.
You know what?
I don't know how to make this look any better either.
You know, it's
well, we
okay.
kind of said, "Hey, thanks for coming on the show," and
Thanks, Jonny.
it's better than you trying to hide while you're trying to.
I can't hide.
This British loyalist couldn't handle the smoke from a true patriot.
Right.
That's what it was.
Yeah, even though the smoke is coming from a Cuban that's not American made. Bye, guys.
Who's Cuban? All right.
Well. R.I.P. Anibal. He will be missed.
So
I just but back to what I was saying. I really do believe that there is a large portion. I'm not saying it's the majority, but I think there is a large faction to be peeled away of Trump supporters that are on the religious side from another candidate who shares conservative views, but also they see as more of a true Christian. We'll say.
Yeah, where I think Pence is vulnerable is, again, he doesn't have a legislative platform anymore because he doesn't hold office anywhere. He doesn't really have anything to point to. Sure. I think because Ron DeSantis and the others are going to be able to point at him and say, well, you never stood against Trump.
Sure.
You let him do whatever he wanted to do. You never got in his way, with the exception of maybe January 6th. That's going to be a hot
He
button.
does have it going for him, though, that he was the closest thing to president out of anybody on that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. But he didn't, again, like most vice presidents, he didn't really have anything to show for it. Other than, again, just carry water for the president.
Right.
This is the same reason why when people ask, well, why isn't DeSantis running next cycle and not this cycle, is for this very reason. DeSantis would be 2 years out of office. Then what's his platform? He has no legislative platform to run on. He has nowhere to be able to make news. Right? Because right now, DeSantis can make news on his campaign and he can make news as governor. Excuse me.
I mean, that's the same argument against Chris Christie.
Pence right now is just kind of background noise.
I mean, Chris Christie from New Jersey is going to face the same
thing. Now, my conspiracy theory is that Chris Christie is coming in as a spoiler to go after DeSantis for Trump.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be the dog to come after DeSantis. But DeSantis seems to be playing Trump really well, in terms of not paying attention to the insults, not paying attention to the non-policy arguments.
It's a Mayweather-Tyson match. You got a guy that's always going for haymakers, and you got a guy who's just dancing around.
Yeah,
and he's doing it smartly. I agree
because I use this analogy, and I think it's maybe the best way to put it about Trump. And I think had more people followed suit we would have had a far more interesting primary in 2016, which is that at the end of the day, a barking dog is just a barking dog.
Right.
And it's only when you continue to ignore it that it just becomes background noise.
Right.
Because there's no bite there.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Trump is a barking dog. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to bark and bark and bark to scare you away.
Yeah.
Until you show him that you're not scared of him.
Yeah. Or you just, like you said, completely ignore it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is a possibility. I actually think that, you know, because there's a lot of people that are still debating whether or not Trump's actually going to get in the election. There is no world in which he doesn't try to run.
Well, right now, I mean, given all the litigation that he's facing,
right.
I think it is what's kind of saving him.
Yeah.
You know, because it gives him some legal kind of wiggle room, you know, to be able to, you know, just defer certain things.
I mean, there's a direct allegory, not that Trump is an intellect or in any way a statesman on the level of Julius Caesar, but one of the reasons why Julius Caesar kept running to be the emperor of Rome was because the second he wasn't, he was going to have like 800 lawsuits judged against him. And that's why he, you know, continually fought for it. And then eventually, like, he couldn't do anything but what he did.
Right.
And Trump is going to be, I believe, in the same space. Some of the reasons I say are dubious, some of which are probably well deserved. You know, it's probably a little.
That's the thing. When I talk to other Republican voters, you know, and the reason that I personally am getting behind the governor as our Republican candidate for the presidency is because Trump has got too much baggage.
Right.
You know what I mean? He has too much baggage. Yeah, during his presidency, he got too much baggage. He's just got too much baggage, and all that baggage is just ammunition for the left to destroy him in the primary and the general.
To that point, I would really just say to anybody who is a Trump fan, I'm not even going to say anything bad about Trump or what he may or may not have done, but just when you stack him up next to Ron DeSantis, who do you really feel like is going to be the better leader and the better executor of this country? If you can really honestly look me in the face and tell me that a former veteran who has governed as wisely and built up the surpluses and the other street cred that Ron DeSantis has being the executor of Florida, and you can stack that up against Donald Trump and what he did while he was in office, and tell me that you think that Donald Trump is the better candidate, I will say I just have to strongly disagree with you. I think that DeSantis is, you know, he of the Republican side, he would be my pick, and I can't vote for Biden again. So unless they throw me a third choice here that is, you know, really good, you know, de facto, I lean that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, are the people hungry for it? Statistically, yeah.
Oh yeah, no one wants this election.
There is a huge hunger for a third party candidate.
I don't even mean third party. I meant like, you know, the Democrats maybe replacing a dude who's literally falling down.
I mean,
5 seconds.
both sides want different choices other than Trump and Biden.
Right.
And we have that opportunity. We have an amazing bench of candidates.
The problem is that the powers that be know that if they switch out Biden for anyone, no one is going to get the support that, I will say, a relatively healthy Biden who just stays the course from now into election. No one maintains that support level because, remember, a drop in 1% of support is a lost election. Yeah. So if there's anything that 1% of people don't like about the person you swap out, you've got a problem. And they also, listen, you know, the DNC is an organization, and the RNC are organizations like any other. God forbid you champion that cause, you get your way, and it doesn't go your way, you're out of politics forever.
Yeah, I do like the fact that, and we'll kind of wrap it up on this, but I do like the fact that he has kind of secondarily officially launched his campaign in Iowa. Yeah. And, you know, I think it shows confidence. I think he's capitalizing on some momentum that some thunder he may be stealing from Trump out in Iowa. And the truth is that you have to win the primary game, and that's by winning the early states. Honestly, polls don't matter. The polls are giving us a litmus test, but again, especially in the last, you know, 10, 15 years. How wrong have the polls been?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm not saying that Trump doesn't have the lead he does. Some will say 20, Kayleigh McEnany. Some will say 25 to 30, which is what Trump believes he has as an advantage. But again, it's a marathon, and Obama had the same. He was playing against the same house of cards against Hillary Clinton until all of a sudden the tables turned.
I don't believe the Trump numbers in a reality test. I think theoretically there's a lot of people that might even say Trump, but I think if you give them a good alternative, especially one, and I'm going to go back to it, not because I am Christian affiliated, I'm agnostic, but I don't think that you can underplay the Christian family man attractiveness to a lot of the Republican base.
Well, and the other thing too is that we're spoiled here in Florida because we have both of them in our backyard.
True. Spoiled might be a way to put that for Trump, but
people don't know. Well, I mean, it's cool to have, a president, former president, live in your state. I mean, it's certainly keeps my one of my closest friends employed. But the fact is that the country at large doesn't know Ron DeSantis.
Sure.
Right. And
I think
he
they're starting to.
Right. And he played the COVID card really well.
Yes.
And that obviously he got a lot of momentum out of that. He got a lot of popularity out of that. People right now, the reason numbers swung back to Trump, I think, is because A, he jumped in first.
Yeah.
B, he's all over the news because of all these lawsuits. And C, people are like, all right, what else you got, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you managed COVID. Good, great job.
Well,
now what?
And I think the COVID card only plays on the right wing side. The left still thinks he was wrong.
Yeah.
Despite
right, exactly.
Evidence.
And the fact that he was, as a governor, he was able to usher in a red wave in Florida and have a lot of huge legislative wins. Let's remember, because we've had this conversation on this show, and I think you may have been a part of it. The reason Trump lost in 20 is because he didn't run on his accomplishments. He ran a negative campaign. He ran on defense, never on offense, and he never touted all the things he accomplished. Ron DeSantis is not going to make that mistake. He's going to go out there and he's going to talk about all the wins he's had here in Florida. And if Trump runs the same way he did, negative, name-calling, insults, and not policy-based, forget it. He's, again, the barking dog.
Yeah. And
people are going to just tune out because we're in a crisis now on many levels to where people want to know, well, what are you going to do to fix all this? And if Trump doesn't have very specific answers, because he's already balked at some of them, the numbers are going to start to shift very quick.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you again, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Nate Ginter joining me, and Anibal, David Cabrera jumped out the window, and so we continue on with tonight's show. We, of course, were talking about Ron DeSantis. We're going to transition over to some of the very culture wars that we've been fighting here in Florida, and then, of course, nationally as well, as we look at Target and their retreat from their Pride display that they've now officially pulled out of, I think, all stores across the country. This, of course, resulting as, I think, an aftermath of the Bud Light controversy and Dylan Mulvaney being on the face of Bud Light, and how that has just destroyed the Anheuser-Busch valuation in the stock market, and how Anheuser-Busch is now on the retreat and trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And now Chick-fil-A may be under fire. And we'll kind of start there, because this is where I think some of my friends in our kind of political talk space get excited. Okay. And I love some of them, Charlie Kirk and Benny Johnson and some of these guys. They make great content. They're great entertainers when it comes to the political space, political news. But just because a company has a DEI policy,
right,
or department, let's just even take it that far, it doesn't mean they've gone woke.
No, and one of the things, I run a business here in the Tampa Bay area, and I can tell you that we put a lot of thought into personality assessments and things like that in training. So we train people to be able to cohesively interface as a group. And there are things, I mean, listen, we've all heard of the wokeness run amok, but I don't see. I think it's dangerous to to swing back too far the other way and go, well, no, there's no reason for those things to exist because women have only been working with men for like 120 years side by side. Well, and it's easy to overlook, personality type differences. It doesn't just have to be about promoting people, for whatever reason. It can be about truly, like having some understanding and a good department who's able to mediate that as well, those differences.
Yeah, because what I was going to say is you have to understand the dynamics of where the company originates from. Okay, and I've worked for some companies like this. Chick-fil-A originates out of Atlanta, Georgia. When Atlanta, Georgia was very different than what it is today. Okay, it is owned by a white Christian family. And based on those Christian values that everyone associates Chick-fil-A with, again, that attracts people like it. And to work there, to move up the ladder, that sort of thing. And I think having someone in there, if done the right way, that can bring you outside experiences, outside knowledge in terms of how to attract diversity, how to attract, and it doesn't mean giving them a leg up over somebody else.
Right.
It just means, hey, let's be more representative of our client base.
Right.
Because again, even Atlanta doesn't look the way that it used to.
Sure.
Tampa doesn't look the way that it used to 20 years ago. And America in general is just incredibly more diverse than it's ever been.
Oh, for sure.
Naturally. And so the company, I think, needs to represent that, to just make sure that they're in step with their client base. And it's just smart business.
Yeah.
Because at some point, and we've seen this happen to a lot of companies, you lose track, you lose that connection with who your client base was, Anheuser-Busch, and you make a wrong turn. And before you know it, like your company is crashing.
Yeah, and especially in business, there just being a hegemony of any type is generally not a good thing. Yeah. Now, I will fight to the death against diversity for diversity's sake, but diversity for the sake of making a better product and for reaching a wider client base is 100% smart business practice. I don't think social causes have a place in most business activities, but I do believe that it's a good business practice. It's just good societal practice when it comes to making sure that everybody is, or you can never ensure everybody is comfortable, but a reasonable level of comfortability, for people that might, if you're the only person of a type in a group, sometimes things can happen without people even thinking about it, that make people feel excluded, and it is good to
look.
Make sure
I've worked in Northern Alabama. Yeah. And luckily for me,
for those who don't know, John's Chinese.
That's right. No, and honestly, luckily for me, I assimilate very well.
Yeah.
Because of a lot of the performing arts stuff I did as a kid, I never developed an accent, even though there is a Miami accent, and so. I mean, it was about 6 months into my job at a radio station in Huntsville, Alabama, where I happened to be talking to my mom on the phone in Spanish, and like everybody just stopped in their tracks. And they're like, "Wait a second, you speak Spanish?" like they didn't even know I was Hispanic.
Yeah,
because I was going by a white radio name. Yeah. I was going by J.J. Walker.
I love it.
And so nobody had any hints, right, of really
Did
what
no one ever yell dynamite at you? That's
And what's funny is I borrowed it from another white guy who was on the radio in the 70s in Miami. But that's a whole
the references that we're talking about, no one is getting right now.
Right,
but
no,
that is very funny.
And so I think I've avoided a lot of uncomfortable circumstances because of that, because of my ability to assimilate. But it's true that in those environments, there's a lot of, again, just because there isn't a large population of Hispanic people there, there's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of misnomers.
Because of the experience you just talked about. So, there's times when, because I look like a certain thing out in public, sometimes people have come up to me that make me very uncomfortable assuming that I'm like them. Does that, when you're in there, people don't know, were there times when, somebody was tossing around jokes or, like anything that made you feel, or making statements or, outright just being idiotic, that maybe you tamped down a little bit? Now, because of your personality, you didn't let that sink in, but some people do.
And that's the thing. I've never been one to be lightly offended.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've never been sensitive to that stuff.
But one of the reasons why DEI, I think, is important if done the right way, you shouldn't have to, to have the personality that you have to feel comfortable in the workplace.
Right.
And there are some things where you can go like, we can't tell jokes about whatever. Like, you can.
Right.
Just know, just know you're making people feel terrible. And
because there's some people that, don't get the humor. Or don't appreciate the humor.
Oh, sure.
I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy to begin with.
Yes.
And some of the best comedy out there is racially based comedy.
I mean, Chris Rock has a career because of it.
Sure, so, absolutely.
There's
but there are like those kind of funny stereotypes that to some people, again, like to them, they've never taken the time to actually educate themselves. And so they do assume that anyone Hispanic that they come across is Mexican.
Right.
And I've had those situations.
Wait, what?
And so.
Sorry. There's more than one country?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them. I mean, just keep going south and,
I thought that's where Antarctica was.
and so that's where you see a lot of the, and I don't mean this in a negative term, but ignorance.
Sure.
It's just, commonplace ignorance.
No, I was just genuinely interested in
but when you're also in, even here in Tampa Bay, where we have a large agricultural community, or northern Hillsborough, northern Alabama, where again, large agricultural community. The predominant Hispanic, even here in Tampa Bay, even though there's a lot of talk about the Cuban community, the largest segment of the Hispanic community in Tampa Bay is Mexican. And so you have to take that into consideration as well. There's some foundation to some of that belief. But again, unless you have somebody in the building that understands, well, hey, maybe we should have more people that are representative, and because there's actually a movie coming out, funny enough, about this Mexican guy, and it's a true story, who was working at a Frito-Lay factory making Cheetos. And I don't know the exact details of the story, but the movie is coming out. He was the one credited with coming up with the Flaming Hot Cheetos.
Oh, okay.
But it was based on what he ate culturally as a Mexican.
Yeah.
And so
that man is a hero, because I love those things.
Exactly. And so it shows you that by them having diversity within their workforce, opened up this huge new avenue of products that they were able to offer their client base that made them a ridiculous amount of money. And so there are a lot of benefits to diversity and inclusion when done the right way. But when you give carte blanche, to some, liberal, girl from God knows what Ivy League university, and you trust her with a multi-billion-dollar brand, and you say, hey, have fun. And, you got to wonder why it took a wrong turn.
I want to take issue with one thing. So I hear a lot of people blaming that girl, or sorry, that woman, because she was like mid-20s.
Yeah.
Okay. Put in a very, very prestigious and slot that would typically go to somebody who was more seasoned.
Yeah.
For sure, Anheuser-Busch brought her on because they wanted somebody, they wanted to hit that young demographic. They wanted somebody who was going to shake things up.
Right.
She did not hide herself in any way.
Yep.
She did exactly what they thought they wanted. And boy, did they not realize they didn't want it.
Well, that was the thing. You know, we had a lot of people.
I let her off the hook on that 100%.
Well, you and I know better.
Yeah.
That
I
girl.
actually think she should have been.
That girl didn't push the red button on that campaign.
Oh, right.
There was maybe at least a dozen people that had to sign off on that before it came to fruition.
And I will also say, everybody out there, shut up and drink your beer. Number one, everybody paying attention to it is what made it a big deal. It was one can made promotionally for this lady. It wasn't like some special run they were doing. And, you know, at the end of the day, I do think that Anheuser-Busch made a category. You make beer, you know, listen, God's guns in America, just stick to the basics.
Right. And they're trying to go back to that.
Yeah.
Did you see see Budweiser's new campaign?
They're donating like $1 trillion to the veterans.
No.
Okay.
Their first new campaign is a new partnership with, you want to guess?
The NRA.
No. Oh, but that would have been a good one. That's how you right the ship, quite literally.
Dude, I'm telling you, there's gold up here.
Yeah. Harley Davidson.
Oh, man, that's... Boy,
because you know those Harley Davidson people,
leather-clad bikers. Boy, that's what a departure.
Oh,
I'm not saying anything about. Listen, you know, you want to ride a hog, I'm there to support.
Look, I agree with you. The Dylan Mulvaney thing blown way out of proportion, but when you put them out there as a spokesperson for your brand, okay. Again, that's going to come with consequences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's like early 2000s Rob Lowe or 1990s Rob Lowe. I mean, not Rob Lowe.
Now we know who your crush is, dude.
Robert Downey Jr.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was the actual reference I was trying to make. You know, it's like, you know, it's like, do you want Iron Man Robert Downey Jr. or do you want drug addict, you know, has-been actor Robert Downey Jr. And so all that to say that they did. There was a big gamble. Mm-hmm. And look, I've been that guy.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to be that guy at a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 200 company that pushed the envelope, got slapped on the wrist, but then they realized that I was actually right.
Right.
And they brought me back to, you know, continue my work. And so, yeah, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some.
Right.
But again, beer is beer. It's like it's not that complicated.
And you know what? It isn't. And there is a world if they were a smaller, more niche business.
Yeah.
Where that pays off. Even if they were, because they're like number one.
If they were a local brewer or regional brewer.
I'll say this: if they're anywhere, well, I know they're in the top 5. Yeah. If they're in 6 through 10, might not have actually been a bad move for them. But where they are so big, they have to be straight down the middle, American fastball milquetoast.
This is
to maintain that branding.
My main message in all of this wokeness versus
make better beer.
Well, if someone can make a beer I'd actually drink, then I think they'll hit a gold mine. But it's the fact that, you know, right now it's the woke versus, you know, basically the Christian right. You know, I would say in some ways. Sure. You know, it's the loudest voices on both fringes, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
What I don't understand from my business experience, from my marketing experience, is that why would you gamble so much on such a small percentage of our population when you've got like the other 90 something part of our population that's going to say, like, we don't agree with this.
Where I usually land on a lot of these things, because a lot of my family's very liberal.
Yeah,
and socially I'm fairly liberal, but fiscally I'm very conservative, and on a lot of you know, I'm more of a constitutionalist than my family, who would burn it alive if it meant a free hot dog. So but the thing that I take people back to is trying to say, like, hey, there's so much more out there that even these people that you're concerned about, if you're concerned with trans lives, the other issues that I think your side is getting wrong are so much more impactful to those self-same people. And this is such a minor thing to even have on your radar, you know. And I know, you know, there's arguments from other people, but the sad reality is, the debt, your taxation, these things. have way more effect on trans lives than whether or not Budweiser faces backlash.
Yeah.
And
yes, there are bigger issues to be concerned with. I mean, and some people say that this is. Some people will tell you it's a manufactured distraction from the actual problems that we're having.
I think it is one of these. I believe it's a symptom, actually, of the populace's kind of hopelessness that actual problems are going to get resolved.
Right.
That they fixate, because I mean, you can force Anheuser-Busch into either A, going deeper in the support for it, or retreating.
Right.
That's a real thing. Going like, hey, what are we going to do about spending the most amount of money ever in history for like the last 10 years and no sign of it stopping? Oh, God, I don't even know where to start with that.
To me, it's more the 1% problems. Mm-hmm. We're the 1% of the earth, you know.
Absolutely.
And these are problems that other countries wish they could have.
Oh, for sure.
Do we have real problems? Of course, homelessness, drug use, all that kind of stuff.
I post a lot on Quora on certain topics, and one of the things that I always go back to when you hear some thread about somebody complaining with like an 18-page thing about why something is unfair for young people or this group or that group, and I always go, hey. Yes, can things get better? Always can. I don't know about you, but if I had a choice to be born today or when I was born, I'd pick today. Because it's only going to get better. I would pick America over almost any other country in the world, probably every other country in the world. There's so much out there. Even for people that are quote unquote disenfranchised or not fully represented, if you buy into that argument, we still have more publicly available resources for free or that actively support you in things than have ever existed in history. So there is, to me, very little excuse for feeling that hopeless other than I understand it because you're beat down with these messages all the time that tell you this is any kind of a big deal. I mean, we're talking about it because we comment on what's going on, but, it is something that, it is, to me, the silliest of sillies to even worry about this either way.
But globally, we are considered a conservative country. In comparison, Europe looks to us, Europe looks to us, I would say most of the globe looks to us and considers us a conservative country.
Because we are, compared to them.
No, absolutely. And this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
But I think what happened is that, with Pride Month, and we're just starting Pride Month, that the left's agenda on this front has been pushed so hard and so fast that the conservative right, the Christian right, is finally pushing back, and they're saying, "Guess what? We're not comfortable with this."
Oh, I wouldn't say finally. They've pushed back every step along the way.
It's but it's just gotten louder and more aggressive, and so we're seeing Target retreat, with their public displays. Yeah, we're seeing the backlash be much quicker and more severe, and again, not that there's look. As a business person, if you want to cater to that community, go for it. I mean, it's a gold mine.
Right.
And there's ways to do it where you're also not offending the other 90% of America.
And also, I don't care if you do offend 90% of America, but just know that's cost of doing business if you go down that path.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to tell anybody, the people who are like, we should boycott or whatever, I go, well, you should boycott. I still want to go to Target because it's a block from my house.
Right, exactly.
But if you feel that strongly, go for it. I don't blame the person boycotting. I don't blame the person that's doing the thing that's being boycotted.
See, I still go for the personal pan pizzas. That's what I go for.
Do they have those?
Oh, yeah. Some of them still have the little Pizza Huts in there.
Okay.
And they make the little personal pizzas, the little personal pan pizzas.
I've been getting the egg bites from Starbucks when I
No
go
way,
in.
man. Oh.
Nothing like a Target Starbucks egg bite.
We'll kind of wrap it up on this hack. Yeah. Did you know, I've heard that allegedly, if you buy a drink at Starbucks while you're at Target, they will give you a free refill on that drink while you're still in Target.
Now, I have heard that as well. I have not tested that theory out.
We need to do that.
I will do that because I drink nitro cold brew and that junk ain't cheap.
That's right. All right, Nate Ginter joining me here. Anibal, David Cabrera just couldn't take the heat, so he got out of the kitchen today. He had another commitment we unfortunately ran into, but we appreciate you for watching The Yard Sign or listening to us whenever, wherever you may be doing so. Make sure you follow us, subscribe to us on Facebook, YouTube, and then, of course, all the audio platforms. We have a great online audio audience, putting us in the top 200 among political podcasts.
That's awesome.
Which,
man.
again, for a little podcast out of Tampa, man, that's amazing.
It's huge.
And so we want to continue to build on that, especially coming up to these 2024 elections. We're going to wrap up with the debt ceiling, and I know, well, we'll probably have to touch on this again because Anibal loves anything with numbers in it. He's the one that likes doing the math. I can't stand doing the math.
I'm the same way.
It went through.
Of course.
It got approved. It obviously, it's being positioned as a bipartisan win. I think it didn't change anybody's mind about anything. Initially, I will say, and maybe even still, I'll give Kevin McCarthy his credit, because people didn't think that he'd be able to put together a deal that was going to get passed.
Sure.
And the fact that he was able to do it on the first try.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
major
compared
snaps
to
to
some
him.
of the other hills he's had to mount in the past, first try is a big thing.
But for someone who's not considered a quote-unquote conservative,
I agree with
who's someone
you.
who they reluctantly elected as House Speaker, for someone who the president said he wasn't going to negotiate with, I mean, this is a big win for Kevin McCarthy. I think this is, again, compared to who is slowly going out the door, your John Boehners, your Mitch McConnells, those guys. I mean, this is a generational shift, and so he's got to earn that clout that these guys have had for decades.
Sure.
And I think this is how you do it.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty win, but a win is still a win. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's tons in it that I would hate to see come to fruition. I think some of the IRS money's still in there. I think obviously the Byron Donalds came out strongly against it. Talking about how really I mean it's like. It's like saying you're defeathering a chicken and you pluck off one.
Right.
It's like we're going to be right back in the same place, or in a worst case, months from now.
Well, one of the things that I didn't hear, and I'm sure it came up, in some pundit discussions, but one of the things that always aggravates me, we hit this debt ceiling argument, and the co-headline should be, is this a referendum on baseline budgeting? Which for the non-political insiders out there, baseline budgeting is the concept where there are guaranteed increases built into every major department and government agency every year that happen, regardless of performance, how the country's doing, what the economic status is like, or, kind of important for most businesses out there, how much money that the entity actually has.
Yeah.
And so that topic never comes up. And so we will forever, as long as we're guaranteeing an increase, you're guaranteeing you need more money. If the country isn't doing well that year, you're guaranteeing a massive explosive debt problem. Yeah. And lo and behold, we've got it.
The problem is, what is the breaking point?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've got to know. They've got to know at some point there has to be a major correction to all this. And again, like we said, I mean, I think maybe only ahead of healthcare. The majority of our spending goes into defense, I believe. So it's defense and then healthcare and then kind of everything else.
One of the stats that I found very interesting about the healthcare expenditure actually is we actually have more public, meaning citizen out-of-pocket money going into healthcare than the per capita than the three next privatized systems that are there, or public systems.
Yeah.
So meaning it actually costs us more to not have public health care, which I'm not arguing for public health care. I'm saying we need to look into that.
Well, the problem is too is that anytime somebody gets a government contract, they know that they can also get top dollar.
Right.
And so you've got every company, doctor's office, hospital out there, and they're going to charge you triple because you're the government, and they know that they can get them the money's guaranteed.
Yeah, and I don't want to get off on a tangent for on healthcare, but the other real problem is it's the same problem in the financial services market. There's been an insane amount of consolidation that at first happened because we wanted modernization, and it's good for the patient. But the reality is, when every doctor's office is part of one of two systems in an area, guess what? There's going to be no competition on price anywhere.
Yeah.
And they can charge whatever they want, and they will.
Yeah. I mean, look, we averted whatever manufactured crisis they said that we were going to go into if we went into default and all that stuff. I think I don't know. I mean, I would like to say that at some point we'll see an adult in the room that is actually going to enact like a balanced budget agreement or something. But I mean, our interest on the debt is about to be the same amount as our annual tax revenue.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no,
and that's not sustainable, regardless of whether you think we owe the money to somebody or not.
Yeah, so it's somewhere up around 13% of the money that we take in right now is actually going purely just to pay it's literally paying the minimum payment on the credit card that we keep spending more on and keep getting more and more of a limit. And I always say, if it wouldn't work for your own household, it's definitely not going to work at scale. Yeah. You know, if you can't make it work at a lemonade stand, how are you going to make it work, in 500 franchises nationwide? Right. So, these things, you're right. It is unsustainable. Unfortunately, what will be the breaking point will be when inflation gets so bad that you're taking wheelbarrows of cash in to buy a loaf of bread. And that has happened in modern societies, in places that were actually better educated than we are now. And you saw some pretty horrific world wars and some crazy dictators rise out of that. So,
well, this is when we realize how young of a country we still are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks again to Nate Ginter, Anibal, David Cabrera on this kind of late coming episode of The Yard Sign. We will be back on schedule next week, Monday. So stand by for that. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, comment, and share with all your friends. Thank you so much for watching and listening whenever, wherever you may be doing so. Good night, everybody. Good night.